All right, and we are live. I'm excited today because I have James Washer with me, who is the CEO of the Infinite Actuary. And before we start into the interview, let's just, James, if you want to just kind of introduce yourself, maybe a little background.
Hey, I'm James Washer, and I teach exam prep for the Infinite Actuary / run the Infinite Actuary, and been doing that for a long time now.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on.
No problem.
So to kind of back up, when did you first hear about the actuarial profession, and did you have any actuarial gigs before starting this company?
Yeah, so I heard about it my junior year of college. So I was still planning to be a lawyer at that point, which probably wouldn't have worked out well because I don't like reading very much. But I was going to be a tax attorney, and my stats teacher. I was just getting an undergraduate degree in math because that required the least amount of studying to get to law school. So, but my math teacher was in actuarial science, or she was an actuary before she taught college math, and so she was telling us about it. And me and a friend just got a summer internship between my junior and senior year, and so I actually got a summer internship, not really knowing what an actuary was, or even what a life insurance policy was, or anything. And after my summer internship, they offered me a full time job, and so never made it to law school, and very happy about that.
That's amazing. I think that was a good choice.
Yeah, definitely.
So then, were you kind of interested in math then from a young age, or was it more just like, okay, this is the easiest route to get into law school?
No, yeah, I was definitely interested in math from a young age. I can remember changing schools in about third grade. And, I showed up to the first day of school and the teacher started asking some questions. And me being the dork I am, I was raising my hand every time. And I didn't even make it through the first class. She's like, you're in the wrong math class. And so that was the first time I think in about third grade. I was like, hey, I'm actually good at something. So,
Nice, nice.
so kind of all through school, math was just my easiest subject, and did the math team in high school. And um, was interested in computer science. So I actually started out in computer science when I went to college, but I took a summer internship. And I think I was just away from friends and family, so it kind of wasn't a great summer internship as computer science. So that's when I said, you know what, I'm just going to go to law school instead. So that's why I just switched to math, since it required less work,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
just get through college as easy as I can. Save up all my effort for law school. But then once I found out that, hey, you can take tests, like, I was on the math team in high school, so I was pretty decent at taking math tests. And I said, hey, you come take these math tests and you get a raise, and get promotions and stuff. And I said, sign me up for that. That's what I need to do.
That's awesome.
That's what I need to do.
You know what's funny about that is I remember when I was in school, I was studying computer science. I ended up minoring in computer science, but
Mhm.
when I was studying it, I was thinking like, I don't want to sit at a desk all day, so I'm going to do math because I want to teach it, so I won't be at a desk. But here I am at a desk all day now, so
Yeah, I
it's
said the
like,
same thing. I said the same thing. I want to get out and like talk with people and stuff,
yeah,
but
yeah,
and so well now I got to do that for a little while, but now I talk to people virtually instead.
yeah, exactly. That's funny. So you ended up studying math and computer science in school.
Hmm.
Where did you go to school then?
Alabama, Roll Tide,
Ah, nice.
University of
Okay.
Alabama. Yep.
Is that you kind of grew up in Alabama, or did you
Yeah,
just?
yeah. I went to school pretty much all throughout here. I went in South Florida a little bit, but almost exclusively in Alabama. So that's where
Okay,
all my friends went. So we all went off to Alabama together.
nice, nice.
Yep.
And then after school, I mean you kind of found out about the actuarial profession? Did you kind of jump into exams?
Oh,
Did you
right.
get your?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, so yeah, I didn't sit for my first exam until my senior year of college, and I actually already had a full-time job offer before my. This was a different time, right? This is way back then. It
Yep.
was much easier to get entry-level positions, and especially in the state of Alabama, where there's not a lot of candidates, and they really prefer candidates from the state of Alabama
Okay.
because they brought people in before, and sometimes people tend to move back out. So if
Yes,
you're like from the state of Alabama and you're interested in actuarial
it
science, they're
helped
like,
you.
yes,
Yeah.
please,
Nice.
because
Nice.
you're a lot more likely to stick around. So I actually got a full-time job offer. I worked for United Investors, which was owned by Liberty National, which was owned by Torchmark. But anyway, so it was a really small shop. It was like me and then the chief actuary for United Investors, and then basically he reported to the chief actuary. I mean to the CEO of Liberty National. So it was
Oh,
really
wow.
small, which was kind of neat. But yeah, so I took my first exam there, and then I worked for United Investors all the way until I finished my last exam and completed. I just became a fellow, and then as I said, United Investors was owned by Liberty National, which is owned by Torchmark, and Torchmark said we're moving all the actuaries out to Dallas, Texas. Well, I was one of those guys that wanted to stay in Alabama, so I had to
Yeah.
switch to the only other game in town, really, which was Protective Life. So right as I was getting my FSA and wrapping all that up, I switched to Protective Life and worked there for about 6 months when I came up with the idea for the Infinite Actuary. And so I was only at Protective for about 6 months.
Wow, interesting. So you started out this United Investors. Were you basically an investment actuary at that point, or were they doing a lot of insurance as well?
No, it was all just life and
Oh, it
annuities
was
type
life.
stuff.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
gotcha.
Just United Investors is just a catchy name for it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Very nice. So at the time, then, when you were studying for exams, did they give you study time at the company?
Yeah, they were great, and I think it really helped me with my performance because we were a small shop, and my boss was great. Tom Aycock, shout out if he's I'm sure out there somewhere. But no, he said pretty much from day one that these exams are tough. You have to get all your work done, but you have X number of study hours. But if you have nothing else to do and you're just sitting there, why not study for your exam? Obviously, get
Exactly.
your work done. They had great study hours. I think it was like I want to say it was like an for like preliminary exams, it was probably 150 hours, and it may have been more like 200 hours for fellowship exams or something. They had a great study
That
program,
is
and they were
really
very
good.
supportive. Yeah, they were very supportive and got you whatever materials you needed, everything. So it was great.
That's nice. Yeah, I feel like I mean, there are companies that say they give a lot of hours, but I feel like it's getting worse and worse with the amount of work that's required. I guess it depends on where you're at, but
Yeah, I've heard stories from lots of students. Yeah, we get 100 hours, but if I take study time during the day, then that just means I'm staying later
yeah,
in the evening and stuff. So yeah, that's really unfortunate. And
yeah,
probably consulting from at least from the students that I've talked to is
yeah.
kind of the toughest
Mostly
game.
consulting. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So then, back then when you were studying, obviously there wasn't the Infinite Actuary which you
hmm
started. There weren't as many exam prep companies. How did you go through the process of studying yourself? Like, what types of materials did you use?
Yeah. Well, I started out when I just picked up my very first exam, and I was going to try the textbooks. I mean, that's when you look at the syllabus, the textbooks were on there. And I started realizing pretty quickly that the textbooks, while they explained things, the textbooks are written for kind of a classroom type setting, and so guided learning. And you can learn from that, but also they don't give enough examples that you need to work through in order to prepare yourself for the exam. So then I started looking at manuals, and so manuals are more written towards the exam and teach you some tips and tricks to be able to work the exams in the time allotted. But me personally, I've always been like more of a audio visual learner. Some people are better at they need to read to focus, but me, I like to just sit back, watch someone explain it to me, and then I can usually do whatever they did backwards, and that's like why I went to college, right? Some people say
Yes.
studying for actual exams, you should only use the textbooks. Well, like, okay, well, why do we have universities and stuff? Just give everybody a library
Yes.
card and say, go study physics on your own. That's not how it works. You need someone to like show you along the way. And college was great for me. I would just sit back and watch the college instructor teach, and then I would do my homework and I'd go and make good grades, without a lot of effort. And I wanted the same thing, so I found out about seminars for actuarial exams. And so, starting with my very first exam, well, I took P on my own in college because I was applied math, specializing in probability and
Okay. Yeah.
statistics. So I didn't really need a ton of help there. But then it's exam one, but equivalent to P. And then when I took exam two, equivalent to FM, I found out about Bob Batten, who's kind of like I would consider my mentor about teaching actuarial science for any of the older people out there that know about Bob Batten. And so I went to his seminar, and I was just like blown away. So like it was like, 4 or 5 days of intensive prep. But then afterwards, I was like, okay, I got this. I've learned the material, and now it's time to go and work a ton of problems and get prepared for the exam. Get
Yeah.
prepared for the exam. And that's what kind of led me to starting the company. Is that once I was through, this is when online learning first took off, and I was like, these live seminars are great, but they have some drawbacks. Number one, you have to leave work, for 4 to 5 days. So that's bad for the company. And if
Right.
if you have a family, that's tough on your family and stuff as well. And the other issue with these things is that you tended to be like a month to a month and a half before the exam. And if you hadn't learned a lot already before you went to one of those, that's a lot of material to cram in 4.5, 5 days. By the end, as one of the students at one of those things, like your brain is completely fried, like you're hardly even paying attention the last day. I said it'd be a lot better if these seminars were spread out and you could use that from the start. If you could sit back on day one and just watch a video and relax and learn something and then work a few problems and do that through the entire learning process, that would be a lot better way to go.
Yes.
And so I said, all right. And I kind of got the idea of this online learning when my first son was born, right after I got my fellowship and had changed jobs. There was I can't remember the name of the website, but I got into photography at that point, and you could pay like a monthly subscription and watch these videos. It's like, this is what needs to happen for actuarial exams. And so
Nice.
I said, convinced my wife and went for it.
That's amazing. So at the time, did you just jump all in, or were you working on this for a while you were working at the same time?
Now I jumped all in. So as I said, I just changed jobs 6 months ago. So I went back to my old boss and I said, "Look, I have this idea. I'm gonna start this company. If it doesn't work out, can I have my old job back?" He said, "You can start tomorrow if you want to."
That's
I was like,
amazing.
okay. So that was like my security blanket. I told my wife, I said, I want to give this like 6 months to a year, because she was a teacher, an elementary school teacher, and we just had our first child, and she just quit her job, and I just was making six figures for the first time, changing jobs, and so it
Yep.
was like,
Yep.
everyone was like, "You're crazy, like you're in the spot where you need to be." But I was like, "Nah, I got to try this," and
Yeah.
so I just went for it, and thankfully, I never had to go back and take my old job, and it just kind of took off from there.
Well, it seems like you made a good choice.
Well, thank you. But to go back, so what I used is basically I would try to study as much as I could
Yeah.
before a live seminar and just familiarize myself with the material as much, and then I would go to a live seminar. And so from my second exam onwards, every single exam I went to a live seminar and did the live seminar, and then I would come home and work a ton of problems, and then, well, at least for
Okay.
the preliminary exams, and then for the fellowship exams, you'd come home and work problems / memorize stuff like that. But that was my um, general strategy all along the way.
So it's rumored that you passed every exam on your first try. At least that's what you claim on your website.
That's what I claim on the
but,
website. That is
but
true. That is true. It also, what's not on there is I never made a 10. So
okay, well,
I passed every single one, but never made a
that's
10.
actually
Um,
it's possible to not get a 10 though, right? You
yeah,
can
it is.
still.
It is on some of the CBT exams. I think all the ones I took, it was possible to get 10s.
Okay, because I was
I
gonna say maybe you got 100% on all of
Yeah,
them.
I made a couple of 9s along the way, but never any 10s. Yeah, I did better on the preliminary exams than the fellowship exams. I made a couple 6s on fellowship exams, a couple 6s, a couple 8s. I believe there were like 4 back then. Um, but yeah, I think I learned or very early on that to me the raise and the promotion and not having to study again, the
That's enough
rewards of
motivation.
that, there's enough motivation for me that I wasn't going to go into an exam without having a really good shot of passing.
Yes.
And I especially, um, I was able to put in a lot of effort. And this is what I try to tell my students. Like, and this is one of the reasons why I think studying with a textbook is just such a bad idea, is because it requires so much effort on the learning process
Right.
that you're burnt out for that last month when you need to really turn it on. And I was always able to turn it on the last month. And if I needed to study a lot of hours during the last couple of weeks to bring myself up, to give myself a really good chance of passing, that sounded a lot better torturing yourself for 4 weeks than having to spend another 6 months. Because back then, exams were only offered twice a year, even the preliminary exams. So like, not only were you looking at studying again, but you had to wait in another entire 6 months before you got your raise and before you got, on to the next exam. And that just was never appealing to me. So that's why I was always shooting for my 10. And if I came up a little bit short, I would get a 9 or an 8 instead of, kind of shooting for just barely passing and then coming up a little bit short and getting a 4 or 5.
I mean, I think that's a great approach, because I have met so many people that spend, 10, 15 more years in the process of even getting an ASA. Not that that's, I mean, there's life circumstances that come up for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm not trying to blame or anything, but like, I mean, it's like you're saying, it's almost enough motivation to not have to take it again, because sometimes those things can drag out for a long time.
Absolutely.
And then you feel like you're kind of restarting on material and all that. Do you feel like for you, was it that you really just prepared far enough in advance? You knew like when the date was you're taking the exam, you did the seminar, you kind of had your process. I mean, obviously you're a smart guy too, which helps. I know everyone kind of has different levels for how much they got to study, but what do you think was your ultimate secret to that?
Well, first of all, I probably have the lowest IQ of anyone that didn't fail an actuarial exam all the way through. I definitely have the lowest IQ of all the TA instructors. So it's not my intelligence, it's work ethic, especially the last month before the exam. So I kind of forgot the question because I had to say it's not smartness because. So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, what I guess to summarize was like, what do you feel like is your secret? And that's work ethic is your main.
Yeah, exactly. And making sure that I saw a couple of mistakes. I've seen lots of mistakes, obviously, working with literally, probably me personally, close to 10,000 students, just me alone, but even talking to other people that haven't actually used my stuff. And that one of the biggest things is that students don't have a plan for what to do. So my plan was, get as much studying as I can done before the live seminar, learn everything during the live seminar, and then come home and practice that and polish it up until I'm ready to go. And that's one of the big issues about, especially the preliminary actuarial exams. It's not just enough to know the material, because you have to be able to work the problems in the allotted amount of time. If a 4-hour exam was 8 hours, then you could just say, you know what, I don't need to work 1,000 problems. I can just know the material, and I have 8 hours, and I can figure it out because I know the material enough. But it's a 4-hour exam, so you have to know all the tips and tricks, and almost every problem you have to be able to read it and immediately work it.
Yes.
And so I think the real secret, if there is one, is to have a plan. I basically break down studying. We'll just talk in terms of preliminary actual exams. It's basically 3 steps. You need to learn the material, practice problems, so you get up to exam speed, and then practice your exam taking strategy. And so in those 3 steps, you can use different sources for. So when I say learn the material, for me, I'm an audiovisual learner. So I want to go to a seminar or watch an online seminar or something. Not everybody is. And, if someone said, hey, James, I try to watch your videos and I can't focus, or whatever, then I would say, you need to use something else. You need to use a study manual or something.
Right.
So find whatever way you learn the material the best. And learn the material doesn't mean master the material. That's another big hang up the students get. And it's our nature, more analytical people. They feel like they have to know every in and out and have to know why everything works exactly. It's really hard. If you do that, then you're not going to get through the learn material step in time.
Right.
If you get hung up and you don't leave yourself enough time to practice problems, and you don't leave yourself enough time to do your practice exam strategy. So I would say the big secret is making a schedule and sticking to that schedule so that you actually get done with the learn process part in time, so that you have enough time to practice problems, so that you have enough time to practice your exam taking strategy. And if you can actually do that, it's amazing.
That is amazing. So, I mean, when you had the idea to create the Infinite Actuary, and you've kind of created a really good process. James's videos are awesome, which I'm sure most people watching have seen them. Do you feel like you were kind of developing that in your head as you were as you were studying, you kind of had the idea while you're at a company and you're like, okay, I need this process for other people.
Yeah, well, I've always been interested in teaching. As a matter of fact, if money were no object, I'd probably be teaching high school math at this point. But I was like, I
Yep.
want to make a little bit more than a high school math teacher. Plus, I don't know if I want to deal with kids who aren't interested
Right.
in learning. I'm sure if you teach like the gifted math program or whatever, you can get some, but you probably have to teach normal classes. And I really wasn't interested in continuing on to get a PhD to teach college level math. So this kind of worked out perfect because now I get to teach people who are extremely interested in learning. I mean, like their livelihood depends on it. So you have people that are interested in learning. And so, I was always interested in the process. And I thought that given that I don't have a super high IQ and, I wouldn't say intelligence is my biggest strength, I said, then, I can help normal people like me, learn how to prepare for the exam. Because it's not just about being smart. You can have someone that's really smart if they take a very poor method for preparing for the exam,
Yes.
not do well. And you can take someone who's not as smart who, if they do everything properly, they can pass the exam.
Totally.
Obviously, intelligence helps. If you have an intelligent person and a non-intelligent person and they both follow the same process, then the intelligent person is more likely to pass.
Right.
But I definitely wanted to more than just teach the material, teach this whole process. And I've tried to build that into our website, and we're getting more and more of that every day. Like I talked about a study schedule. It's right there in our website. Like you key in the date you're going to start studying, the date of your exam, and it builds the schedule right in. You need to watch this lesson by this date, work this sample exam on this date, and so on and so forth, to really try to help people stay on track, to make sure they get through everything.
That's amazing. So, what year was it that you actually started this company then?
So it was in 2006, the year my first son was born, in
Okay.
2006. So I think we officially, wrote the paperwork or whatever in November of 2006, and we opened for business in January of 2007. So it was the spring 2007 was our first sitting to sell
And
seminars.
the name, the Infinite Actuary. Can you give us a little background on that?
I hate that name. I really do. If I could do anything different in this entire thing, I would change the name. But no, it came from I wanted a 3-letter, acronym: SOACAS. So just 3-letter
Okay.
acronym, and I figured it would be a name to where people wouldn't have to say the whole name, and that's what most people just call it TIA,
Yep.
which is what I like. And TIA also stands for thanks in advance. Like if you ask someone a question and you say TIA, and so we're trying to get a 3-letter acronym, and I like that we found one that stuck, that also kind of means thanks in advance as well too. I remember back when we first launched and we were going to annual meetings and stuff and trying to get our name out there, and we'd have people come up to us like, an actuary can't be infinite. I was like, yeah, I know that. Thank you. But we used to have a really cheesy tagline that went with it too. It was the Infinite Actuary, learning without bounds.
Oh boy.
We dropped that cheesy subtitle at some point, but
that might have been a good idea. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously the brand, sometimes like it doesn't always matter what the name is, and then it gets associated with something that's great. Because like I remember hearing the story about Nike and the swoosh. They really didn't like that at first,
yeah,
and then now that's such a recognizable thing, and you see it everywhere. But at first they were like, it's okay, and they just used it, and now it sticks. Kind of like TIA. Now it's just like we all know that name. At least in the actuarial profession, we all know that name.
Yep. We're stuck with it now.
As nerdy as it is.
Yep, we're stuck with it. But no, it's good. And we didn't spend a ton of time. I mean, when you're starting a new business, there is so much going on. Like you don't, and so we just we said, all right, we got a name. Let's just roll with it, and we got a million other things to do. So let's go.
So I'm curious because you basically quit your job. You told your wife, we got 6 months to a year. How was that process for you? Like, what were your days looking like? And when did you first realize like, oh, I'm making some money. I can keep doing this.
Yeah. Well, I was very fortunate early on. The success came relatively easy because I found a couple of established instructors. I hadn't taught personally, but I had taken live seminars And so Mike Carmody was the guy that I'd taken seminars from for my fellowship exams. And I contacted him and I was like, hey, I have this new idea. And so I went to him and I showed him how I planned for things to work. And he agreed to sign on. And so just like he gave the company kind of instant credibility right from the beginning, because he was really, really well-known name
That's amazing.
in the business. And I really wasn't planning to do much on the CAS side, but I was a big member on the Actuarial Outpost at the time. I posted a lot. And so I bounced the idea around to a few friends on there. And it turns out that one of the friends on there, I didn't realize, Ken Fikes, who is my partner now, taught exam prep for the casualty exams, which I had like
Oh,
no
wow.
plans
Okay.
for. And he's like, oh, this is great, man. We'll do the casualty stuff. So he was kind of like the Mike Carmody on the casualty side.
Okay.
And so having those two guys from the beginning just worked out really well. And we launched that first sitting and kind of used probably the actual outpost a little bit to get our name out there, because we've really never done any marketing like at all. So, but thankfully enough people knew those guys. And
That's
I
amazing.
can't remember if we went onto the bookstores then, if we were selling on the bookstores immediately. I don't remember. It's been so long ago. But yeah, we got some decent sales. And then I just kind of decided from the very beginning that the way that this would work is to just do a good job of helping the students. And then, because I know that I was kind of semi-famous back then, or I would say the people right behind me, because every time I would take an exam, I would kind of outline my process afterwards, and I would go on the actual outpost and I would
Oh, nice.
this post of like how to kick whatever course's ass.
That's
And
awesome.
I did that like every single time, and the people would like message me on the actual outpost afterwards, like, "Hey, yeah, I'm just following right behind you, and like I'm just doing exactly what you say every time." And so I had a little online following there, and so that was
Yeah.
enough to get us going. And I wanted to do the same idea here. Is just we were going to grow by word of mouth. We're going to grow by trying to make happy customers. And when someone uses a product, and hopefully like our product, you spend a lot of time using it, then you feel very comfortable telling your friends and
Yeah.
coworkers about it after the fact. And that's exclusively how we've built the business
So
from back in 2007.
you really started out with like live seminars. I was curious when this kind of branched into an online company, or obviously you kind of had that presence online at the beginning. Did you kind of
Yeah.
start out with a website and things like that, or was it
No, we did
exclusively?
both right from the word go. We had online seminars from the very first sitting.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, because that was to me the really big thing is I wanted to sell spreading out the learning process, because I thought it was at least for me, it would have been a much better way to learn the material than just going straight to
Yeah.
a live seminar. And also, it was a lot of benefits to the companies that if they didn't want to send someone to a live seminar, they saved the days of having to send somebody, they saved the flight, the hotel. But just like anything, we were a little bit chicken at the point to just like not have live seminars. So at the beginning, we had both. And
Okay.
some
Yep.
people just signed up for the online seminar. Some people just signed up just for the live seminar, and some people did both, the online
See
and the
that?
live seminar.
Oh, that's interesting. I was wondering because I think I mentioned to you before we started this that I went to one of your live seminars, and I think it was 2015. And then I noticed soon after, that was probably towards the end of when you stopped doing those.
Yeah.
And I was kind of curious what the reasoning behind that was. I do think your online seminars are like amazing. So was it mostly just because like that's really how people learn?
Yeah, well, we just saw early on the live seminars were very well attended, and I think that's because that's what a lot of people were used to, live
Yeah,
seminars.
yeah.
I mean, we used to we would have like 6 or 7 live seminars all together, and we'd have a large. I mean, we'd take over a hotel. It was like a convention
Oh, wow.
basically, but they just kept slowly dying over time. And
Yeah.
so at some point, we just said, you know what? We think our online seminars are good enough.
Yep.
The nice thing about the live seminars, it was more of a way. Well, what we wanted it to be, we wanted people to learn using the online seminars, and then we would just like clear things up at the live seminars and just kind of really put on the polish. But
Yes.
what we
Yep.
found is most of the people attending the live seminar were just people who were really busy in life, and they like didn't do any learning beforehand. So it
And
was
they
the old
weren't ready.
they weren't ready for the live
Yeah.
seminar, and so basically we're just having to reteach everything at the live seminars, which we didn't think was the most efficient manner. We think it's much better to spread it out. So they
Or the
weren't
other
the
thing is people probably would use it as kind of a free trip because if your company is paying for material and a
yeah
live seminar, at least for me, I was like, my company
Yeah.
was paying for live seminars at the time, and I'm like, well, I might as well go.
And I miss those a little bit because, it's nice to get in front of people and actually get to talk with some of your customers and everything. And so we learned a lot
Yeah,
from that and got a lot of great feedback and made a lot of great connections and stuff.
I bet.
But I just, at some point, like, the time commitment of a live seminar and the cost, like you really don't make any money off a live seminar because it costs so much to rent the hotel space and everything. But
Oh, I
it
believe
was
that.
great. And it was really good for me teaching those for 6-7 years. You learn the material a lot better because you get the questions
Right.
immediately after you explain something. And so you learn, okay, if I say it this way, I get 2 questions. If I say it this other way, then no one asks any questions. So I'm assuming that they got this right. So
I
it's
believe
really
that.
helpful for me as an instructor to grow on how to explain things.
So to back up, when you first started the company and you launched it, you did the website and all that. You mentioned to me a little bit before this interview that you programmed some things yourself. Was it scary jumping in and starting a website, like putting the videos up there? Were you kind of learning that all on your own, or did you have help doing that?
No, well, so I actually, that website where I got the idea, I found the developer of that website and I contacted that person and
Oh,
had
okay,
him
nice.
develop our website. And there would just been no way time for me to do that at that point because I was trying to find instructors. I was teaching one of the exams myself. I was teaching the FM exam.
Yeah.
Um, FM was exam 2 was probably my best exam, and 2 and the old 3. So that's what I teach now for the company is FM and MLC because those are the exams that I did the best on.
Yep.
And so that's what I've kind of always been my philosophy. I want to try to find the best instructor for each
For each
exam.
one.
And yeah, so you don't want me teaching P or C. Dave Ravel is 100 times better at that material than me, so that's why I had to go and find a Dave.
I know Dave's voice quite well also from
Yeah.
watching his videos.
Yeah, and that was just lucky. He was, again, somebody that was just on the actual outpost, and so
That's
just kind of
awesome.
reached out and we made it happen.
So I kind of wanted to talk about you just as, I mean, we were talking about your actuarial background and starting the company, but you as an entrepreneur, kind of creating all this. Can you give us an idea of some of the challenges you've experienced over from 2005, 2006, all the way up till now? Like some of your any hardships you've faced?
Well, yeah, I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit. From, like, I can remember in 7th grade buying blow pops at Sam's and selling them at school. Like, I've just always been that type of guy, and my older son is the same way. So I'm pretty sure he'll be an entrepreneur. But driving home from work, I had a million crazy ideas. And I always come home and tell my wife, and almost all of them, she'd be like, "This is stupid. This will never work." But it was the first one that, like, I came home and she's like, "This is brilliant. This will work." So I knew right then and there. She's kind of like my filter, and once she thought it was good, it was good. So the challenge is, I mean, it's the same challenges that every small business. Early on, you're like pulled in a million different directions, so it's like figuring out where you need to put your resources. And in any new startup or whatever, if you're the guy running it all or the gal running it all, it's going to be like crazy work hours,
Yes.
80-hour weeks. But hopefully that settles off. For me, it was probably after about a year or two, those actually started to become a lot more reliable. But also, probably, I would imagine this is with most new businesses, or probably any business, is just finding good people, good workers, and just like just a good person. Especially like with us, we don't have any like central location. There's no
Yeah.
like office.
Right.
Everybody that does anything for the Infinite Actuary does it out of their own home.
It's all remote. Yeah.
It's all remote. So you need people who are motivated to do work without you sitting. I'm not a hands-on manager at all. Like, I don't need to be tapping on your shoulder every 30
Yes.
minutes and
Yes.
checking sure that you're doing something. So I need to find people that are self-motivated and that will get the job done. And then it was harder early on, and probably because our sales have definitely grown, but we had a lot of good instructors early on that were making decent money teaching, but they're also advancing in their career at work.
Right.
And as they get higher and higher, it's like they don't have time for both. And so we've had some that decided to just leave their job and be, kind of full-time instructors, but we have others, great teachers, Jeremy Bill comes to mind, who was a great teacher for us, but he just decided that his work life was more important, and he had to stop teaching. And so just keeping good instructors that are good employees of any business is probably been the biggest challenge of all of it.
Oh, I believe that.
Yeah.
So on the flip side, what are the positives you see to what you've done in entrepreneurship?
Well, I think the biggest positive is it just feels really good when you start a business that's successful, obviously, but more importantly to me, it's a business where I feel like we actually help people. We're not scamming people. We lay it all out there. They know what they're getting, and we're actually improving people's lives, hopefully allowing them to study a little bit less for their exams, and progress through the exams faster than they would without us, and that's the main goal. So that makes
That's
you feel good
amazing.
when you do that. Yeah,
That's got to be a rewarding experience, something that you created yourself too, like started
yeah,
from the beginning to see it grow like this and to see so many people that it helps in
yeah.
the end.
My
So
favorite day is the day after exams are released, because
I
I get
bet.
just a flood of emails. Hey, I
Yeah,
passed. Thank you so much. Da, da, da. I'll never tire of those. This is
that's amazing.
I guess we started in 2006. This is 2019. So like 12, 13 years of this, and I can't imagine 12 to 13 years from now that I still won't get excited when I open up those emails the day after exam day.
That's so
Mhm.
cool. I'm curious with creating all these. Obviously, you help so many people with the exams that are in place. Then the SOA goes and they'll change all the exams, as we know they did recently. Like, what kind of methods do you guys use to stay on top of that? And how do you? I mean, obviously they release like the syllabus and things like
Mhm.
that online. How do you guys stay up to date with that?
Yeah, so what we actually have is, it would be impossible for me to do all of that, and that's why, as you get bigger and bigger, you've got to have people that you trust that can take those responsibilities away from you. And so
Yeah.
we actually break our company up into three different segments: the preliminary exams, the fellowship exams for the Society of Actuaries, and the casualty, like ASA/fellowship exams. And so we have a director for each one of those areas. And
Okay.
so they're kind of in charge of staying on top of instructors, keeping up to date with the changes for those specific areas, and making sure that the instructors are kind of doing what they need to do.
And I know you kind of mentioned that like some of these instructors you knew from like a long time ago, you were friends
Mhm.
with, or you knew them online. I feel like that's one of your company's big strengths is the instructional piece. At least for myself, I
Yeah.
use your videos a lot. How do you continually find good instructors? Was it mostly through connections?
Well, early on, yeah, it was connection slash luck, just knowing people that were actually good teachers. Um, Now we have a little bit more formal process. Like early on, if it was like year one of the Infinite Actuary, and Paul, and you like emailed me and say, "Hey, I know something about uh, you know, exam 7 or whatever on the
Yeah,
casualty side," I'd be like, "All right, let's
do
go,
it.
let's rock
Let's
and
do
roll." You know what I mean?
it.
But now it's a much more process. So we
Yeah,
get a lot of emails from people, a lot of prior students, which is great. We've had a couple of instructors that were students of ours, and we really like that. Um, but now it's more of a little more formal process. We make them create a couple sample lessons, and give them some feedback, and see how well they can teach, because it's I'm also a firm believer in one teacher per exam. Well, not necessarily one teacher. Like sometimes the exam's so big we might split up into two, but basically like one product
yeah,
per exam. So I'm not going to offer three different online seminars for exam P, because I'll have an opinion about which one of those is the best, and
yes,
that's I'm not if this one's better than this one, then I don't want to sell this worse one to anybody. I want everyone to buy
exactly.
it. So now when we're filling a new position, or an instructor had to leave for whatever reason, um, like I know we have an instructor that's planning to retire soon. His wife's retiring, and so he's going to retire as well too. So when we go to replace him, we'll gather as many candidates as we can, and we'll just pick which one that we think teaches the material the best,
Yeah.
and that's pretty much it.
So, kind of vetting out people, are you having them actually teach stuff and show you how they teach, or are you like actually having them create something and send it to you? I'm just curious how that
Yeah,
process
no.
goes.
Yeah, so we have them create like a sample video lesson, because obviously at the end
Mhm.
of the day, we're an online video, and you have to be engaging.
Yes.
Not everybody has to be as cheesy as I am in videos, but
You got to throw in a couple good jokes.
exactly, because the medium is hard.
Yes.
It's and we've had some guys or girls that are decent or pretty good in the live setting, but that don't carry over to online. Online,
Right.
you almost have to be a little bit over the top, because if I'm teaching a live seminar, people will continue to pay attention because they don't want to disrespect me,
Yeah.
potentially. But if you're watching a video, it's so easy to pick up. Thankfully, I didn't have these distractions when I was studying. But you pick up your phone, you check
Oh
Twitter
yeah.
or whatever. So you've
Yep.
got to be engaging, and so that's the number one thing. The instructor has to be engaging and be able to hold people's attention. Otherwise, they won't watch it, which kind of everything falls apart.
Yep.
But then they also have to be able to create like good quality questions and kind of understand the whole process of learning. And it can't be, I'm always leery of people that are too smart. Although we have some really smart guys, and thankfully they're grounded too. Like when you talk about somebody like David Ravel, he's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
fifth generation PhD. Brother's a rocket scientist who's who's
Whoa.
the black sheep of the family because he's the one that doesn't have the PhD and stuff. But
Oh my
sometimes those
goodness.
people, they just do. Like they
Yeah.
don't need to like break things down. But thankfully, he does understand that. So we also need people that understand the process and can teach to people like me, mere mortals, and help them through the whole process and break things down and explain things, at a level that most people can understand. And
Yeah.
that's, to me, that's what makes a great teacher, is someone who can. And I think that's why I'm a decent teacher, is because I can't skip all these steps. Like I need to like go piece by piece, and so I can explain it to someone else who's learning it for the first time as well.
See, I'm very similar to you in that regard, and that's kind of why I was asking this question, because I remember I had a professor one time say, "You don't uh you you'll realize how much you know something when you try to teach it." I think is
Yeah.
the way he put it,
Hmm.
because once you get up there and you're trying to explain it, you may think you understand it, but if you can't explain it, you don't truly understand it. Um,
Absolutely.
so I mean, there could be some smart people, but I think teaching is just a different level of understanding.
Yeah, yeah, it gets hard
Yeah.
sometimes too. I can remember my younger brother, or one of my younger brothers, unfortunately did not get the math gene. And I can remember tutoring him in math, and I was trying to explain to him how x plus x was 2x. And it's like, how do you break this down to somebody? So
Yeah.
sometimes you really gain a deeper
Oh yeah.
understanding once you try to get it out of your mouth. You gain a deeper understanding yourself as well too.
Yeah, I feel like I cemented some of that kind of stuff tutoring algebra. Like when
Hmm.
I was tutoring college algebra, it was very simple to me, but when I was trying to explain it, I'm like, wow, this is making me think about things in a whole different way. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And some people just can't do it. I had a college professor in the math department who would write something on the board. He would turn to the class, do his hands like this, and then he'd write the next step on the board. I'm like, hey, buddy, I'm going to need a little bit more than
A little
this.
more than the hand
Yeah,
gestures.
the hand gestures aren't working for me. So that's what
That's
I tried. That's what we try to do at TA. We try to offer more than just hand
yeah,
gestures.
that's good. Well, I mean, we can't really see you if you're just writing, so we only hear your voice, so you can't do the hand gestures.
That's very true. Very true.
Uh, all right. The next thing I wanted to ask you was, right now, obviously, you're doing the actuarial exams. Do you see TIA changing or expanding in the future in any way, to other types of things, or even in the actuarial space?
Yeah, so we've toyed with this idea for over 10 years, um, expanding beyond actuarial exam prep. And every time we're about ready to pull the trigger, we just say, you know what, we don't want to spread ourselves too thin.
Yeah.
Kind of our mission is to help people pass actuarial exams. And so if we start going down other avenues, then we might take away some of the resources that we could put back into actuarial exam prep. So I'm constantly, I'm a big believer of reinvesting in the company. My dad always told me you got to spend money to make money, and so we constantly trying to update our website, add apps, learn new ways to teach, whatever I don't know if you've heard of that book, Start With Why by Simon. Well, I wrote his last name, but I can't read my own handwriting.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, but it's a great book, and it says a lot of companies that fail. I can remember one example from the book was like railroad companies, and it was saying their why they didn't have a why. They were railroad companies.
Yeah.
If they were say we're in the business of moving stuff from one place to another, when airplanes and other methods of moving stuff came around, they would have jumped onto that.
Right.
So they didn't really have a why. So the why at the Infinite Actuary has always been we help people prepare for actuarial exams in whatever way, the best way that is.
Yes.
And so currently, I feel like the best format is online, watching lessons. But if some other new method becomes more, is a better way, then we'll switch to that. So our why is to just help people pass actuarial exams. And so
Totally.
I'm constantly thinking about that and constantly
New tools.
investing and trying to make it the best process as possible.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, going to the phone apps and things like that. I'm sure that's all been new for you guys in the last however many years. So who knows what it'll be in the coming years? But
yeah, exactly. Technology is always changing so fast,
yeah.
so we're just trying to keep up.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so you have any advice for actuarial entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general? I'm asking this a little selfishly for myself or for anyone else that's watching.
Yeah, I would say, because I have a lot of friends that ask me this all the time and stuff too. First thing is just go for it. Like, and I think for most actuaries in general are probably very conservative. I've always been a little bit more aggressive. My name online on the actuarial post is Bama Gambler because I used to like to gamble, play poker and stuff.
Nice.
So I've never been scared to take a risk. But I think that's probably for someone who's a hard worker and has a good idea, it's easy to start listing out all the reasons why you shouldn't do it. And you'll convince yourself very easily that you shouldn't do that. But at some point, you just got to say, you know what, screw all the potential negatives and everything, and I just got to give it a certain amount of time. You can't stick with something that's clearly a loser for too long.
Yes.
So that's like with the TIA. I told my wife, hey, just give me six to 12 months, and if it doesn't work out, but I've just got to go for it. I've just got to try. And you might fail the first time, the second time, or the third time.
Yep.
But if you have enough good ideas and you just keep trying, eventually you'll get there. And of course, you're going to have little failures along the way. No matter how successful, I'm sure Amazon had plenty of little failures along the way. But at some point, he just said, I got to go for this. And every successful entrepreneur, they all at some point just said, today is the day. We just go for it.
I mean, that's similar. Your story is similar to other ones that I've heard. I mean, you kind of got the 6-figure salary. You got to where people would say, don't give this up, but you had that itch and you had to try it. And I mean, taking that initiative is pretty amazing what it's done for you.
Yeah, it's been great. It's scary, but it's worth it. It's worth it in the long road.
Definitely. All right. Now, number one tip that you have for balancing work, life, and exams for people.
This is another thing that I think really helped my success. Number one, I had a very supportive wife. And I told her we're not having kids until I finish my actuarial exam. But that might work to everybody, actuarial studying. I know lots of people might already have kids or they don't want to wait, which is fine too. Those are great decisions as well. But that definitely helped my success not feeling, because I had friends that I was studying with along the way that, felt guilty for studying. It's like mom guilt. I'm here studying when I should be home with my kids, which is a tough situation. So that's a big one. But I did another thing when I was studying for exams, which I think really helped. And that is I very rarely studied at home. One, because at home I was distracted more easily. Go to the kitchen, turn on the TV. So what I did was, I'm a morning person anyways. So I would show up to work before work started. So if work started at 8, I would show up at 6, or maybe 2 weeks beforehand, 5 or 4 o'clock if I needed to. And I would study before work. And if I had work study time, I would usually continue that on in the morning because, again, I'm a morning person. And then if I needed to study more, I studied immediately after work. So I always made my studying at work as almost like part of my part of my work day. so that when I was home, I was actually home.
That's
Whereas
smart.
if you try to go home and you have dinner, but then now you're going to leave and your wife's in the other room watching TV and she's like, why don't you come watch
Yeah,
Game of
yeah.
Thrones with me? You're going to be like, yeah, I want to
I'm
watch Game of
gonna do
Thrones.
that.
Yeah, but if you're at work and then you're not going to leave and do that. So if you can
Yeah,
build it as a part of your workday, I think you're going to find that's a lot better. And I usually never worked on Saturday ever. Definitely during football season, I wasn't
oh
working. I
yeah.
mean, study. I wouldn't study on Saturday.
Especially being
Um,
an Alabama fan.
exactly. So Saturdays were no study. I
Yeah,
tended not to study on Sundays either, unless it was getting close to the exam and I needed to do some sample exams
yeah,
or work more problems or whatever. So if you can make it as much a part of work as you can, then it won't feel as big of a drain on you and on your
yeah.
social life as well. And the other, for a significant other, this worked with my wife, although I said she was very supportive. Um, Maybe you get the source materials or not. Usually with TA, you don't have to get the source materials, but back then there was no TA. I would stack up the source materials on the table and said, this is what I have to do over the next 6 months. So, if I say we can't go out to dinner tonight or whatever, this is why.
Yeah,
But, if you're using an online seminar, you can, for example, LTAM has just hundreds of hours of videos, especially if you count all the video solutions. You can tell your wife, look, I have 900 hours of videos I have to watch and 1,200 problems that I have to work to work over the next 6 months. So if I say sorry, I can't do something tonight, this is the reason why.
yeah.
Yep.
Those are great pointers. I mean, I will say when I was studying, I haven't gotten my FSA, but I got my ASA when I was doing that. I'm not much of a morning person, but I got up early anyway, and I would get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, and I would study before work, just because I found that that's when my brain was the freshest. That's when I wanted to devote. Basically, I wanted to give my best energy to that as opposed to work. That might be a bad idea, but I did. That's what I wanted.
I was the same way.
And so I felt like that was a very good strategy. And this is coming from someone who's not naturally a morning person.
Mm-hmm.
It worked better for me.
Yeah, but there are people that they only study well from 11 to 3 o'clock in the morning, and if that's you, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
So just make sure that you're always studying during that time. Then.
Yeah.
Try to get your studying done then. Now, if you only study well from 6 to 9 p.m., then you're probably not going to have much of a social life, because that's when everyone else is doing stuff. So
yeah, that's true. All right, well, James, we're getting close to the top of the hour. So the final two fun questions here is, what is your favorite hobby outside of everything actuarial?
Without a doubt, golf. Big golfer.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
I lived in Scottsdale, Arizona for a while.
Oh.
It's a big golf place.
Yeah, a few golf courses there.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. And are you in Atlanta or
Birmingham? Just south of Birmingham.
You're still in Alabama. That's right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a lot of golf around there?
Yeah, and we golf pretty much year round here. I mean, it's very rare that you go longer than a week or two without it reaching 50 degrees.
Oh wow!
So it's nice that you can pretty much golf year round. So
that's amazing.
And actually, that's funny. This is a little strategy that I used to use when I was preparing for actual exams. On practice exams, I'm a firm believer of treating it like an actual exam. And one of the things that means take it in the time allotted. You don't look at formula sheets. If you have to use the bathroom, you don't stop the clock, because you can't stop the clock. You can't eat during there, so don't have a cheeseburger next to you, eating the cheeseburger while you're taking the practice exam.
Yep.
The hardest thing to replicate, though, is exam pressure.
Yeah.
I've talked to and met a lot of really bright students. Back when I was teaching live seminars, I used to do this thing where I would give problems where they would work it timed, and the first person to answer it would get a point, and then at the end, whoever had the most points would get a T-shirt, an Infinite Actuary T-shirt.
Nice.
And every time that student passed. Well,
really,
for 5 years, that student passed. Whoever had the most points. Then finally, one person didn't. I was just devastated, and I was I had to contact her up. I was like, hey, what went wrong? She just had exam anxiety, and she just lock up on exam day. That's a real thing for a lot of people.
Yes.
And so pressure of the exam is the hardest thing to replicate. So what I used to do when I was taking practice exams is I would set myself a goal. Say if it's my first practice exam, okay, I want to get 18 out of 30 questions right. If I get 18 out of 30 questions right, then I get to go play golf tomorrow. If I get less than 18, I'm going to the library to work, 50 problems instead. tomorrow. So I would use golf as a little motivator to try to do well on the exams.
I think that's a good way to do it. We'll make a
Yeah.
little game out of it. I used to do little things like that. It wasn't golf, but I
Yeah.
had little rewards and things that I tried to hit, and I was like, okay, I can do this if I get to this point. So
yeah, I get to binge watch 3 hours of TV or whatever.
exactly.
Otherwise, I'm working 50 practice problems. So yeah.
All right. Second question is, in an alternate world, if you did not have an actuarial business and you had to start something completely outside of actuarial, what would it be in?
Well, I like him. Yeah, I could be a golf instructor. No, probably a restaurant, honestly, because I started in the restaurant industry when I was 15 years old as a dishwasher, making $4.25 an hour.
Nice.
And that's actually where I met my wife, at that restaurant. So I worked I worked from 15 years old to 21, and I did everything in that restaurant. By like 17, I was the kitchen manager. Even in high school, I was like making the schedule, doing the ordering and everything. So I actually thought at that time I was probably going to be a restaurant entrepreneur.
Wow.
But thankfully, my dad had worked in the restaurant industry and was a manager and stuff. And he's like, "You don't want to work in the restaurant industry. It's like miserable, like the rest of your life." And so he talked me out of doing that. And so obviously I went on to college and everything. But yeah, probably a restaurant or some kind of programmer. Create apps or something like that.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, James. This has been fascinating, and I love hearing the story behind like how people started something and your journey. Because I mean, we all as actuaries have heard your voice so much on these videos, so I was like, it'd be so great to have you tell your story. So
I wish I had a better voice, but we got to work what we have. Oh, thank you, appreciate that. No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. And for all those who are watching, if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe. We have more great guests coming on all the time. So thanks again. And I am out from Spokane, Washington. James is out from Birmingham, Alabama.
That's it.
And we will see you all next time.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.